All right. Since I'm not going to be in class today, I just wanted to give you some last instructions on how you can better edit your story and put those final touches on it, and also to remind you about what you need to have to turn into me next class. So your short story is due next class. So at the very, very beginning of class, not at the end, the beginning of class, you are going to turn in the following. You will have a physical hard copy of everything, and there will be a digital copy of everything that you're going to turn in. So, in both the digital and the hard copy, which is a printed portfolio in a folder that you will hand to me, you will have all of your evidence of brainstorming. So, that can include pictures that you took, pages from your journal, um, printed lists or whatever you did from notes or in a Google Doc, all of that, all your brainstorming. You're going to have evidence of all your drafts, so that's the zero draft, the first draft, the second draft, and any other drafts that you did. If you have drafts of your story, of a story that you wrote that you hated and got rid of, I still want to see that as part of your writing process. So put all that in there. Um, in the Google folder, I want to see the videos that you created or that you made when you were um, drafting. Then I need the final draft of your essay, or not your essay, your story, and I need that clearly marked that it's your final draft. And last, I need your analysis essays. So remember that's your criterion A for this assignment, so that needs to be all answered. If you forgot the questions, they're in Schoology in the document. So all of that needs to be turned in on Monday or Tuesday, whenever you have class, at the beginning of class. Okay. If you have questions about any of this, please email me. I will be checking my email while I'm in Guam. Okay, so when you're writing your final draft, a couple of you talked to me and uh, talked about how you can't quite figure out how to end your story. So what I'm going to do really quick is just give you a couple of ideas. So when you're writing your story, what you have to think about is, what do you want for your characters? Do you want them to be happy at the end? Do you want them to experience misery? Do you want them to learn something? Do you want it just to be a surprise? So these are things you have to think. What do I want? So one ending that you can have is where it circles back to where it began. So think about stories like Alice in Wonderland or The Wizard of Oz. Does the character go on this adventure in a different place, but then come back to where they were, having learned something or having done something new? So that's one idea. Another ending could be where they learn something. Maybe some bad things happen. They're sadder, but through that experience that they had, they're wiser. So a good example of that is Inside Out. Um, in Inside Out, there is some heartache in there. I mean, that weird elephant thing, the imaginary friend dies, and Riley loses her childhood. But through that, she learns lessons, the parents learn lessons, and the emotion characters also learn lessons. Um, you could end your story with a feeling, like a really strong feeling. So I thought of Toy Story 3. If you think about how that movie ends, it's Andy giving his toys away to a new little girl, and they're watching as he drives away, as he's grown up and he doesn't have time, or he's outgrown them. Super sad. And so that definitely and nostalgic. So that ends on a feeling. Then another example or another choice that you have is a surprise ending with a strange twist. So I've got Disney movie, Disney movie, Disney movie, but then for the surprise, Fight Club. So if you haven't seen Fight Club or read Fight Club, because it is a book, it has this surprise ending that you would never expect. I won't ruin it. Okay, so when you are editing your draft, there are some basic things that you need to be doing. So, like I said last class, you need to continue until you turn that in. You need to be adding concrete details, and you need to be thinking about um, sensory details. So you don't want to just give very basic, like, oh, the floor was wet. I got my sock wet. Tell me what that wet sock felt like. What, or like, if you're talking about a smell, really describe that smell so that we can smell it as a reader. Um, we talked about how you want to not tell, you want to be compact if you are going to be telling. So much of student stories, so much of the word count is wasted on telling rather than the showing or the movement of the story. You want to be as specific as possible when you're writing, uh, and you want to use strong verbs. You want to limit as much as possible using those helping verbs like is and was. You want to cut down on the ly adverbs, and you never want to say very. Like, she was a very nice girl. That is a terrible sentence to have in your story. So if you click here, this link for where it says strong um, takes you to an explanation of what strong verbs are, and this one gives you a list of examples that you can use. So both good resources that I would check out. All right, so those are the basics. Those are things that, oh, sorry. Oh, there's two more. Whoops. Okay. The other thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you're writing your dialogue correctly. So typically when we have a story, when a new person speaks, each person speaking gets its own line. So when one person speaks, um, his quote is on one line, then you hit enter, and then if it's a different person speaking, and then her dialogue would be underneath it. That's basic stuff. And paragraphs, I looked at some of yours and I saw a lot of chunks of paragraphs. You want to break up your paragraphs and keep them on the smaller side unless you're describing one thing. So if you're describing um, the beauty of a unicorn jumping over a rainbow, and you spend quite a bit of time on it, that can be one paragraph, but once you describe that and you move on to something else, start a new paragraph. You don't have to follow a paragraph has 5 sentences rule when you're doing creative writing. Your paragraphs can have 1 to 2 sentences, and that's fine. So think about what the spacing of your story and what you want it to look like, and what makes it easier on the reader. Because think about when you're reading a story or a novel and you see like a huge paragraph, what that does to you as a reader. Okay, so once you've done all of this, which everyone should do without question, the other thing the next thing you should do, if you're pro, and everyone wants to be pro, is think about pacing your reader, giving your writing movement through the length of your sentences and the words that you choose. So we talked about this with A Clean, Well-Lighted Place. How Hemingway had very short sentences and the words that he chose were a certain way, but then when he was describing the cafe, or when it switched to the inner monologue of the older man, how it changed, and how the pacing and how the writing changes the way that we read it. So here's an here's just a quote from a writer, and it says, and I'll read it to you, and it's a good example of this. This sentence has 5 words. Here are 5 more words. 5-word sentences are fine, but several together become monotonous. Listen to what is happening. The writing is getting boring. The sound of it drones. It's like a stuck record. The, the ear demands some variety. Now listen. I vary the sentence length and I create music. Music. The writing sings. It has a pleasant rhythm, a lilt, a harmony. I use short sentences, and I use sentences of medium length. And sometimes, when I am certain the reader is rested, I will engage him with a sentence of considerable length, a sentence that burns with energy and builds with all the impetus of a crescendo, a roll of the drums, the crash of the cymbals, sounds that say, listen to this, it is important. Okay, so that quote says everything. It's just like what we talked about in class. So, whoops, it's the same quote. So that's everything. Please take the time that you're giving to really polish your story and make it good. You can do peer editing if you like. You don't have to. And please email me with questions. Okay, have a good class.